Hey everybody, welcome to EMS Office Hours. I am Jim Hoffman,
And I'm Dave Brenner.
and we're kind of waiting for Josh if he hasn't forgotten about the show today. So we'll see what happens. Just want to remind people to please go and share the episodes, whether you're looking on Facebook or YouTube, or if you're looking on Apple uh, Podcast, or if you're looking at it on Spotify, wherever you're listening to this, please go and share the episode and spread the word about the show. So today, I normally don't, Dave, put in the show notes and stuff what our subjects are going to be.
Right.
I like it to be a surprise. Everyone loves surprises.
I love surprises.
Right, but of course, my one of my favorite people says, we love surprises, but only the surprises that we want, not the surprises we don't want. Those we call problems. So the things that there was one thing that this is an article I saw. I think it's a few weeks ago. This came out with an EMS agency. I believe it's in Wake County EMS. It's in North Carolina. And they started this thing where they were going to charge $60 a year for their residents to provide EMS. But now it's not like people have to pay that money. It's strictly voluntary. But what it does, according to the article, and I'll put the article in the notes, but if you go to the article, I think more than once, they try to make you pay like $1 a month for a subscription to the online newspaper they have there. But pretty much they say that they offer the $60 and residents pay it. And again, it's voluntary. You'll get EMS whether you pay the $60 or not. But they say that what ends up happening is that if there's any charges for the ambulance, not the ER or anything like that, but for the ambulance itself, that go above what your insurance company will pay, you're not responsible. They're not going to charge you for it. So if they charge $300 for the ambulance, your insurance pays $200, they're not going to come at you for additional $100. That's going to kind of cover that. The thing, and there's no limit to it. You can call the ambulance as much as you want, and then they end up, they'll eat the cost, the difference of what your insurance pays, versus what they're charging. And I don't know. I read the article, and there were some comments that were kind of negative to, what people kind of being a little put off by the fact that they're looking to charge a subscription type service on that. And the thing is that I've seen this before where I don't know what Josh is saying. What the hell in the chat room? Anyway, hopefully he'll figure it out and get back on in a minute. Anyway, so hopefully I'm looking at the that subscription, and if you think about it, nowadays you've even got doctors that are doing that, right? There's some doctors that are charging sort of like this exclusive, almost membership to be, a patient of theirs.
They certainly do that in dental offices.
Yeah. Dental office is a big one too. Sure. I mean, the dentist that I go to, I subscribe for an annual thing, and I get so many cleanings and so many x-rays, and it's already everything's prepaid. Anything they find above that is like built into that cost. So what's your take on it? Because the Wake EMS is saying that this is going to help them a lot, offset a lot of their costs by doing that.
Well,
so I don't know, Josh. All right, you talk amongst yourself, Dave, and I'm going to
talk amongst myself.
Resend Josh the link.
I'm the only one who listens to me anyway.
Right, exactly.
So my thoughts on this are, first of all, I believe it's not their first year doing this. They're just advertising it again, and it's an opportunity. I mean, I know out here on Long Island in New York, you call a 911 ambulance, you may be billed by the police department, if they're operating it, and the private agencies that operate ambulances, and fire departments and community ambulance services now are able to bill. I think this year was the first year fire departments are able to bill on Long Island and the rest of New York. And I think if you buy off on the fact that you may need to call them more than once, and you know who you are, you have chronic conditions, you have ongoing conditions, you have 12 people living in your household, and
Yeah.
5 of them are teenagers. Yeah, you might need an ambulance, and $60 is a bargain to cover any of the overcost. I don't see it as a problem. If you don't like it, you don't want to buy it, you don't buy it.
Yeah.
I also like that, as I read through it, that any of the extra monies or something, it goes back to the county to support the ambulance service. So yeah, I don't see this as a big deal. They're not mandating it. They're not pulling it out of real estate taxes. If you live there and you don't want to pay for ambulance service, presuming in fact that you end up paying for ambulance service, not everybody does. And some people have insurance that covers that.
Right.
Of course, people driving through town who are non-subscribers, who end up with a 911 ambulance because they've had a motor vehicle accident or they were driving through and got sick, they called an ambulance, they're going to get billed whatever they would have gotten billed.
Right.
I see it as listen, these are tough times in the municipalities and business and EMS for getting money. And I see this as, I think it's reasonable. $60.
Yeah. $60 is, I mean, I saw it, like you said, I think they've done this before. And like you said, I feel it is pretty reasonable for them to ask, for that type of a fee. $60 is like nothing.
I wonder if it covers helicopter service.
It's probably just, I think it's probably just their individual ambulance, service.
Well, maybe they have a Wake County helicopter.
I know for $120 a year.
WCH, Wake County helicopter.
Right. For $120 a year, you get the helicopter service thrown in as a bonus.
You get a great T-shirt.
Right, and you get a cab ride back for $150 a year. You'll get cab rides back from the hospital.
Getting back is a big deal.
Yeah, yeah.
Especially if you're in a rural county, a rural region.
Yeah.
People were telling me when I was in Kansas that sometimes they have a 4-hour ride to the hospital, and people are concerned about how to get back. I said to them, well, they could just call Uber, and they laughed at me. They said, we don't have Uber rides for that.
Yeah.
City boy.
I mean, well, yeah. And the thing is, like you said, if you're somebody who has chronic issues where you're calling 911, you feel you're calling 911 frequently, or family members that do, because this can cover the entire household, this $60, not just per individual. So it's the entire household that's living in that home. So, if you anticipate calling EMS a lot, it's a pretty good deal, because I think if most people, they don't think they're going to get a lot of, charges when they call 911. They think it's included in their taxes or whatever, or that the insurance is going to pay for it. And then they get hit with a bill, after the fact, you know what I mean? And I think once somebody gets hit with one of those bills, they're going to be like, okay, I need to pay that $60. Because $60, I mean, to me, I feel like if you end up using it just once throughout the year,
you made the money.
Right? It paid for itself, I think, at that point, and I don't know if there's any other EMS agencies that run 911 that are doing that. I know in the past, FDNY had talked about charging for extrication, charging for, boarding up houses when they, after a fire.
Would you like us to use the hacksaw or the power tools?
Yeah, yeah.
We have a
Sergeant.
special deal today on the power tools. We'll get you
Yeah.
out in 3 minutes,
You-
or we can use the hacksaw. It'll take 12 minutes.
Right, right. You know, and I mean, and I've seen in the past where I've seen fire departments, who want to add a tax to people, for the fire service, and people they freak out. They don't want to pay the additional tax to run the local fire department, you know. Um, so I don't know. I don't know if people just feel like this should all be already included in their taxes, that their health insurance should automatically cover it, and that should be the end of it. And then when they see something like this, they're like, "There's no way, that I'm gonna pay this thing." You know what I mean? So I don't know. I don't know.
Maybe we'll
So
get Josh coming in. I just sent him.
Josh
We
is
didn't get
trying
the
to
link.
come in, but for some
I just
reason,
sent him the link.
I sent him the link already, and Josh, for some
Yeah.
reason, his mic and video are not connecting, so I can't bring him in. So that's his deal. Yeah, I know he hears. I'm here. I hear. I her. But yeah, Josh,
Yeah, I
it's
see
not.
that.
It's not.
I'm
It's not.
here.
Yeah. So another thing along the line, the same, I guess, sort of along the same line, and I'm gonna change my picture here so people that are watching this can see what I'm talking about. And
Yeah.
I had posted this on the Facebooks, and I got a lot of comments on it, and I don't know, when I working in EMS, I've had stuff thrown at the ambulance. I've had notes left on the windshield about where I was parked, or using the lights and sirens, or things like that. And I've had stuff thrown at the ambulance, especially on certain holidays. People throw things at the ambulance. I've had people throw things at me. Some of the areas that I had worked in, where they threw things off rooftops, at us when we were walking into the buildings, and this one here, they actually went and wrote on the ambulance itself, I guess, pretty pissed off that they ended up, using lights and sirens. And this is a FDNY voluntary hospital. It looks like to me, from the markings on the door here. I don't know what hospital it was, but they're showing the colors and stuff. Looks like one of the voluntary hospitals in New York. But I'm wondering with this type of thing too, if this is just another, like you said before, times are tough, and I'm wondering, is this just a symptom of changes going on, in society, where EMS is getting looked at almost as like an enemy sometimes. I mean, I know back when I would work in some pretty rough neighborhoods, and I never worried about getting robbed or assaulted or anything like that, because I felt I was there to help, and they knew that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I feel like now it's getting to a point, you're seeing more and more things and articles about EMTs and paramedics are being assaulted. There was one that was recently stabbed. One, it was an EMT guy recently was stabbed, and then who's getting shot, and then there's some things you read about ambulance crews being ambushed and being shot at when they get to near a call or by a call. And I wonder, is it actually changing, or are we just seeing more of it being reported on? I mean, how many experiences have you had, Dave? I mean, in your EMS lifetime, compared to what you're seeing now, does it seem like it's increasing, or it's pretty average compared to what you've experienced?
Just my personal experience, it doesn't seem worse to me. I don't get a lot of threats. I don't, I just want to go back to that picture that you've got up there. maybe there's something we don't know. That looks like that's a responder car, right? That looks like
I don't know if it's a. I don't know. I mean,
it doesn't look like an ambulance.
it's got a volunteer. One of the voluntary.
Right, volunteer
Stickers on it.
EMS member
It could
SIDS.
be maybe it's a fly car or a supervisor
Yeah,
car or something. It could very well be.
it looks like that to me. And I could imagine that in a really tough call, I don't need to describe high stress calls, that a supervisor shows up, with responding to an urgent call with their sirens on, closes the door and failed to shut off their sirens
Right.
and ran to where they needed to go. And maybe these sirens were on for 35 minutes at 2 o'clock in the morning, which could be annoying. I think there are better ways to deal with that than the way they did, but
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that happen before too, where sometimes people get up on a scene and then the sirens are on a little longer than what they really need to be for a crew getting on scene. Maybe that somehow piss somebody off at that point. That could very well be too.
yeah.
Um,
What did you notice? Did you notice again? I do know that we have the instant ability to post everything that strikes our fancy,
yes.
and
Yeah.
and so there is that, and then share it infinitesimal. I share it with 3 people, they share it with 3 people.
Right. Right.
10 evolutions down the line, we've already shared it with 37 million people.
I know.
I love the math on that.
I just, like I said, this, I think a lot of people reacted to this photo, with, I guess that would be a common response, right? Oh, but if they needed the ambulance, it wouldn't,
Right.
They wouldn't complain. If it was their loved one that we were responding to, they wouldn't complain about the sirens. They wouldn't complain about the response and stuff like that. So I don't know. It just, like you said, I think it could have been a better way for whoever wrote this on that ambulance or that flight car to respond, versus what they actually did. So, my question, I guess, for the show was just to kind of get your take on it and see if you're seeing an uptick, on a personal level, or do you feel what we've seen in the media and stuff is pretty much what we've been seeing? And in a lot of ways, I feel I've seen a lot more of the. I mean, as far as this writing thing goes, that I don't think is anything new. I think that goes on in a lot of places, and I think a lot of people experience it. Maybe not on the ambulance like this, but notes being left. People come walk up to the ambulance, or they wait for you to come out of the person's house, and then approach you like, why did you park this way, or why were your sirens on at 3 a.m. and on this block? Who was in your way? The block was empty, stuff like that, and
Parking could be an issue.
That's been going on for a while.
I've seen parking be an issue.
Yeah.
I've seen, convergence down dead end streets where nobody could get out. You get an ambulance and a police car, or an ambulance and a fire truck, or an ambulance and 2 ambulances.
Yeah.
And they just, and some streets are narrow, can't do much about it, but sometimes they're side by side without any thought of how are we going to get out of here. Right. And not just us, the people who live there, they got to go to work. They got stuff to do too.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I feel I was always very conscious of where I was parking the ambulance. I was always very conscious of that when I would respond to call. I was very conscious of using the siren, going on a street late at night. There's nobody there in the way to get out of your way. I never saw a need to, keep the sirens on right up to the point in front of the house if there was nobody in my way, especially on a one-way street someplace. You know what I mean? But I do feel that there has been an increase in the assaults and especially violent assault where EMTs and medics are being stabbed and or shot at or physically assaulted. I feel that seems to me to be a bit of an increase going on.
I'm sure we get grouped with other uniformed services.
Yeah, yeah. And it used to be that you would get a cop would show up and they would be your sort of like your shield going into places. But like I had mentioned before, with getting stuff thrown off a roof at you, and there were reports of things being thrown at ambulances and police at that location. So whenever you respond to that location, you'd have to have a police escort to go in. Now, well, that's great, but I don't know how a policeman's going to stop something falling from the top of the building, with me walking next to them. It's just like for me, it's just like more targets. There's more vehicles, more people to throw stuff at. But I don't know. Like I said, I saw that and I posted it on Facebook and got some interesting comments on it. So I thought maybe just pop that in there and get your take on it. And as anyone watching can see, Josh found his way.
Oh, I am. When you send out a link, Jim, send it out. Reply to all. It probably would be helpful.
Here's the thing, Josh. This is 2000.
Yeah.
Great. Your old ass needs to figure out how to find links, and if you don't get the link at some point,
yes,
a message or a text message to me would be helpful.
I sent a few
minutes before the show, not once the show is started. So
yes, a few minutes before the show. Actually 10, 15 minutes, but the timestamps. The neat thing about email, Jim, is it has timestamps.
All right.
Okay.
I want to argue with you on while we're live because I don't think the listeners.
Oh, why not?
Shit, if you could.
So I just wanted to say a thing to the last little bit, just my 2 cents, not about cops having to be there or anything else, because we all know reality. We can ask dumb questions, but we all know why they're there. The municipalities, and I've sat in a number of municipality meetings, small town municipality meetings. And when you're looking at the budget of these places, you're going to see a majority go to police. It's just assumes to be the way these budgets are made. They're not. And then the second is the town. Way down there is the volunteer fire department in most of these places. And after that, they don't even, EMS is an afterthought. As far as any sort of budgeting or any sort of.
Are you talking about
what?
About the subscription thing we were talking about before?
Oh, I think it's a great idea because it puts in the public's eye that takes money to run these organizations. An ambulance used to be $100,000, and now they're approaching $400,000, and sometimes more. And a specialty bus, forget about it. It's $1 million or more. So what is the public looking for? Anyway, that was my 2 cents. Didn't want to be left out.
Well worth it.
Yeah, no. We want to hear your 2 cents, Josh. That's why we get you on the show.
That's right.
We want to hear it.
And Dave would say, "Here's your nickel change."
Right. So the last thing that I have on the docket, if you will, is now this is something that I didn't know that this was going on, but I saw some posting going on in some of the Facebook groups that I belong in, EMS Facebook groups that I belong in, and about the FDNY EMTs and medics, the line crews. They were not getting paid for staying after their shift or coming in before their shift early, checking out ambulances, cleaning out, the truck for the oncoming crew and stuff like that. They were doing it just on their own time, and they weren't getting paid for it. So I believe a few of the the line members decide, you know what, this is ridiculous. We're not getting paid for this time, and they went and sued the city, for all this lost time. Apparently, they won, and now the city has to pay, I think, like $27 million or something like that to all these EMTs and paramedics to reimburse them for this time that they were spending, after the shift was over, to not leave the ambulance, either understocked or maybe dirty for the oncoming crew. So I don't know. I know that, I would go in early, to start checking out an ambulance, and I wasn't getting paid for it. But if I got back from a call, like a late call, something like that, and I came back and I would help the oncoming crew clean up stuff, restock it, things like that, I was getting paid for that time. I wasn't, until I clocked out, I was getting paid. But when I would come in early, I would always be there early and start checking out the ambulance before I was actually getting paid, when I was actually on the clock. So I'm wondering what your guys take it. I mean, should everyone get paid for every single minute and second that they're there, or is there a certain amount of, I guess you want to say, maybe work ethic to come in and do the right thing, before you're getting on the truck? Now, there's a lot of people listen to this and who volunteer, and the entire 8 hours is free, right? So for them, they're like, well, what's the big deal? We come in, I do it for free for 4 hours or 8 hours, twice a week, 3 times a week, or whatever. You know what I mean? So I'm wondering what your guys' take is on that. Do you think that they should be getting paid for every single second that they're there? Not just the FDNY,
So
in general.
here's the volunteer guy. I haven't gotten paid on the ambulance since I started in 1977.
And you're still rich.
Because I didn't go into EMS for my money.
Right.
Yes, you can see the beautiful room behind me, the grand piano.
Yeah,
sure. So
I have a fireplace.
Yeah. I don't have one. It's just, well, I do have.
You-
Anyway, here's the deal.
It's right
I
behind
think
you.
when you're hired to do a job, if you're expected to be early, you get paid to come in early. If you're expected to stay late, you get paid to stay late. I think that's what a job is. Makes sense to me. It's what they ought to do. Do I think it's nice when somebody comes in early? Yeah. I see the paid folk I work with all the time coming in 15, 20 minutes early and saying to the other one, hey, you take off. I got the shift covered now. Or
Right.
let me help you with that. I see that all the time. And that's nice when that happens. But if you walk in at 6 o'clock and you're paid to be there at 6 o'clock, there's no complaints. You can't have a real complaint.
Yeah.
And I think, one of the ways to fix this for employers who are saying, listen, we can't have a person come in 30 seconds late and then somebody who left on time, now we got a 30-second or 1 minute or a 2 minute or a 10-minute period. You pay for overlapping shifts.
Yeah.
You have to pay for people to be there 15 minutes early. If you want them there 15 minutes early so that if they're 10 minutes late, they're still 5 minutes early, you pay for it.
Right.
That's what I
it's
think.
funny that, I thought about how I would be there early and stuff like that. And I would do things like you said, Dave. You tell the crew, hey, you can head out. I'm here, so no sense you staying any longer. Both of us being here, we both know if a call drops, I'm taking it. You're not going to take it, so you might as well get. But on the flip side of that, like you said, I would take it almost personal if my relief the next day wasn't there early, and they stroll in. If my shift ended at 7. They'd stroll in at exactly 7 o'clock. And
especially for the guy you got there 15 minutes early for the day before.
Yeah. I mean, what the hell's going on here? Why aren't they, can they be maybe 5 minutes early? I got to sit on pins and needles on the edge of the ambulance worrying that I'm going to get a late call. Driving into exactly 7 and then getting coffee and then, getting dressed or whatever. And I'm still sitting there waiting for them to come get the narcotics.
The flip side of that is you come in, you're on time, you punch in your you're on time. You don't have to be 15 minutes early or anything. And your crew that you're supposed to relieve is on a late job. And I have sat in that crew room for 2 or 3 hours waiting for a late job to clear if it's a serious situation.
Getting paid.
So I'm getting paid for that. So I really do come down on this side very firmly with Dave. Is if you're in for a certain prescribed number of hours, that's when you're on. That's when you're getting paid. If the requirements of the job. Because I used to get this thing, you're supposed to be 15 minutes early. 15 minutes early is on time. And I would say, as soon as you start paying me for those 15 minutes, I'm happy to show up. But at that point in time, once you are not paying me, it is my time. If I have an obligation to be there at a certain amount of time, then I will be there at a certain amount of time. Our hospital actually tried to set up you were late if you didn't punch in 5 minutes early.
Yeah, that's
although
nuts.
the way the time clock worked, you didn't get paid for those 5 minutes because you were considered early to your shift. So they can play, management will always play all of these games. We used to be on a 3 8-hour rotation for a 24-hour shift. And they discovered, hey, if we put these people on a 12-hour shift, we need one less crew per rotation per month. And that saves us, X amount of hours per year. And that's their prerogative to do it. But their prerogative is not there to ask you to show up and not pay you. If you're being requested, if it's a part of the job, show up. That's your job. But you must get paid. And it's another important thing that also has liability issues. If you're on the clock, not on the clock.
Yeah, sure.
And,
Get hurt when
a lot of places tried it.
You're on your own.
Right. And so what they actually stopped at my place was jumping on the bus early. I was taught when I started in EMS, I'm old enough to remember the days, you were taught you did the extra things. You showed up early to relieve your crew so they didn't get a late job. It was just the right thing to do. And they would show up, you could count on them. There were also used to be days where we didn't clock in or we clocked in on time, but we actually started on the bus early and logged in with control early. And let me tell you something, you can't do that anymore. Can't jump on the bus early, even if everything is as it was. Can't jump on the bus early. It's a liability.
So
I agree with you, like on that end, that you have to, I guess, look at it sometimes from the management end of it, where yes, if you go in early, you start doing something and you get injured, you're not punched in. They could technically, because you're not punched in, say, well, you weren't on the clock, so we're not paying disability or workman's comp or whatever else, or any of your time off, anything like that. They can take that, that approach. But I don't know, man. I mean, come on. You show up 50. What the hell's going to happen in 15 minutes? You're checking the ambulance out. You know what I mean?
But it's not 15 minutes, Jim. As I just said before, the other group could be on a late job.
Doesn't it balance out, though, Josh? If you, like you said, not getting paid, right? But if the crew is on a late call for most crews, when they get a late call, it's at least a half an hour, before they come back into the.
Well, if you know what you're doing, it's at least a half an hour.
Yeah, and that's a half an hour of use of the oncoming crew sitting on their ass getting paid. But on the flip side of that, if you go in early and you're not getting paid, you know what I'm saying? You're getting paid for the time for those late calls where you're sitting there doing nothing versus coming in early and, like you said, doing the right thing for the other crews,
Let me give you a scenario.
I was always early. Like you said, the whole thing. 15 minutes early, you're on time. You're on time. You're late. You're 15 minutes late. You're saying something.
Okay, so you come in 15 minutes early. Your bus isn't there. You haven't clocked in because you have to clock in. You can't clock in before 5 minutes before the clock or some. We've had rules like that. Okay, you figure you're going to do the right thing. You're on your own time because you're not getting paid, you're not clocked in, and you start cleaning the bathroom. Now you spilled some chemical in your eye and you have to go to the emergency room. Whose time is that on? And they're going to ask you, wait, you were doing employee work? You were cleaning the bathroom, which depending on the rules of your house, you may or may not be allowed to do. Most places allow it, but you were doing it off the clock. What were you doing on your own time coming in and doing something? Now you're injured.
I totally get that. There is that element of liability, the element of who's paying for something if you do get injured or get hurt or exposed to something. I work places where they have a totally different, what I guess you would say, workers there. They weren't EMTs, they weren't medics, but they would wash the ambulances, they would restock the ambulances. And so when you came in, that wasn't an issue. Everything was already checked out for you. It was washed for you. It was, stuff like that. So you would just check your basic bags, before you went out. And that was an agency where they had a very strict rule, and you could not punch in earlier than 7 minutes before the start of your shift. So a lot of times I would be early and I would look at the board and see what ambulance I was going to be on. And then I would go to that ambulance and be parked in whatever zone it was in. I would go to the ambulance and start checking out the basic stuff. And there were a few times that I would get screwed because I would forget to punch in. And I'd be sitting there checking the ambulance out. Next thing I know, oh shit, now I'm 5 minutes late. And then I had to go get a supervisor to sign off because he saw me there. I was on time. He saw I was on time. And I told him what I was doing. And, so yeah, there's a lot of, little nuances, to that, I guess. And I guess for me, and I think a lot of times, but even like with this show, we talk about a lot of the stuff that is more of a, I guess, reality to EMS, where you're saying, okay, the common sense and the kind of clinical approach to things is worrying about getting hurt and who's paying for it and liability and all that stuff. And then there's the other side of it is of you're dealing with real people that you're relieving, real people that are looking to go home, real people that want to get the hell out of there after, being hammered all night with calls. So if you're there early, you're standing there and they're looking at you like, are you going to come sign these knocks? Are you going to come take these keys? And you're like, well, not yet, because it's not quite time for me to punch in yet. You become the asshole. People look
on the flip side of that, how many times have you gone to relieve somebody and say, hey, listen, I'm here if you want to jump off, and they want the OT. And they said, no, I'll hang. There's probably going to be a late job. I'll take it. It's a late job. It's theirs. It's theirs. It's their right to take, isn't it?
Yeah, but
yet you're not supposed to. You are supposed to minimize your overtime. The lectures we all get.
Or time stealing. They say it's time stealing if you're doing that type of stuff. Saying like you said, you come back from a late call. You don't want to come back and be back in 10 minutes. 10 minutes after 7. You want to make it 7:30, so you're getting paid for the half hour of overtime. That because you're not going to get paid if you punch out. Before that, so there is those elements that are there. I just, like I said, I just feel like there is a, I understand this lawsuit and I understand, them wanting to get paid on the front and back end of things, because I feel in that case, the agency is expecting them to come in early and stay late and actually work, but they're not being paid, versus what I'm saying, where you're kind of doing it as the right thing to do without this expectation of the agency telling you to do it, and like Dave mentioned early on, we started talking about this, is that agency, if you're getting expected to come in early, expected to stay late, then you should be getting paid. And I think that agencies, if that's what they expect, they need to make that clear when you first start working there. So then, like you said, Josh, you come in at exactly 7, then no one has anything to say. But if they're expecting you to come in 15 minutes early and the agency tells you that, then you're expected to come in 15 minutes early. And again, you should be getting paid for that time.
Where they really made the stink was on the non-24 buses, the 16-hour buses. So you'd come in the morning and the bus would have been left from last night. It didn't run overnight. And so if you came in on 15 minutes early, you knew that the rig was there and that equipment, that you could go through that equipment and have time to your shift and not feel rushed at the beginning of your shift. And those are the type of things that this really more applies to than the 24-hour buses, because the 24-hour buses, there's always a little bit of gray area of when they start and stop. I mean, a shift is absolutely on a certain clock, but when the people come in, if you're a few minutes early and they're a few minutes late, what do you do with that time? And so it's that the situations like the 16-hour buses where from management, many have heard, well, you should be here 15 minutes early. If you're 15 minutes early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. Have you ever heard that? If you don't like your job, go to Walmart. I mean, these have all been things have said, but times are changing. And I think that's the summation of this conversation. Times have changed. Things have to be more structured. They have to be more regulated. We're in a dangerous field, and without protocol and routine, we put ourselves in danger. So even down to punching the clock, that discipline has to flow throughout the organization. How is that, Dave?
No, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. I feel that there's two sides to it. There's the people side versus, like you said, Josh, the protocol and what the corporate, let's say, side of it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I see both sides of that.
You can't have corporate yelling and screaming. You have to come early. They can't do it.
Well, like you said, but unless they said collegially for it.
Listen. You're talking to a person. I mean, I always did more than I had to do. I taught in New York City schools. I never got there at the time it was time to start. I wasn't the first person out the door. Yeah, I put in a ton of time that didn't need to be put in. I fed some of my students. Period. I mean, it's what you do. Sometimes you do above and beyond. But nobody can demand above and beyond. You have a right to demand what your job description is. That's that's the demand part. Everything else is nice. And as soon as you have one side tweaking the other, then you default to your contract. What's in writing? That's what I have to do. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
I like what's in writing. I was hired as a consultant for an East on Long Island. They were having problems with their lifeguards. I'd been an ocean guard for 24 summers. And part of the problem was they said, listen, we tell our public that the beaches are open from 9 to 5, and we pay our lifeguards from 9 to 5, and they tell us they can't be in the lifeguard chair at 9. And so I went down unannounced to all of their beaches, and I watched the beaches open and I watched them close. And none of the lifeguards were late. None of the lifeguards were leaving early. But if you want that lifeguard chair covered at 9 o'clock, they all had 2 lifeguards. So I was like a genius to them. I said, here's what you're going to do. Lifeguard A, they're on the early shift. They come in at 8:45. They will work from 8:45 to 4:45. Lifeguard B works from 9:15 to 5:15.
Right.
Now the beach is covered from 9 to 5. Anybody who has to leave has time to do it. You know what? At 5 o'clock, that guy is still on the books till 5:15. He's got the time to take the buoys and whatever else he has, bring it to the shack, lock it up, and go home. The first guy at 8:45 gets there at 8:45, opens up the shack, gets everything, and is in the chair at 9. And they said, and how much extra does that cost us? I said, just what you're paying me.
Yeah.
It doesn't cost you another penny.
I think that is I think a good point, Dave. You mentioned this earlier too about having overlapping shifts so that this is
So that there's
not really
not,
that
you don't take all your ambulances off the road at the beginning of a shift.
right. I worked when I worked one agency I worked at. It was a small agency. They only had the 3 trucks, but they had 1 medic truck, 2 BLS trucks, and the BLS trucks were staggered. One would start at 7, one started at 8, and they were staggered. Then they had another BLS truck come on that started at 7:30, so they kind of had everything staggered out.
They did it right.
Yeah.
Good.
The medics, you were screwed. It is what it was. It didn't have another medic truck to stagger anything. But yeah. So I think I don't know. I think it's a good quick comments there today, guys. I appreciate you guys coming on. Sorry, Josh, about the link issue.
Uh-huh.
And we're going to pretend that was accidental.
Right. Well, that's immediately where I go because of history here.
Yeah.
I didn't relieve. I wasn't there 15 minutes early to relieve Jim on the late job. So
how appropriate.
Exactly. All right,
guys. How I did that? You see what I did there?
See how you tied that all together.
You kind of just got in there.
And now I see the fuzziness around you. You have that sort of halo thing going on. So I see that is indeed not your spacious, professor's layout with grand piano.
Yeah, no.
I was thinking, I knew you played the guitar, but not the piano. Remember, you can.
You know the difference between a guitar and a piano? Piano burns longer.
All right.
All right.
Good
morning, Jim.
You have anything you guys want to add? Anything coming up you want to mention?
I got stuff.
Go.
I got stuff. I'm going to be at the New York State Vital Signs on the October 22nd, talking about broken heart syndrome and 12 lead EKG patterns, not to be missed, not STEMIs, but you really need to see them. Then I'm going to be at what is it called? EMS Pro in Connecticut, doing a couple of presentations there. I'm very excited about that. Also in October, in November, I'm going to beautiful, balmy Anchorage.
Wow.
So excited to
it will be.
there.
I remember you talking about that before. That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah. We got an 8-hour class there on psychological trauma and EMS. I'm doing that with one of my friends, also a co-author of that course, Megan Williams. And then I'm doing 12 lead EKG, axis vectors and fascicular blocks, broken heart syndrome, and those four patterns I was talking about before that people need to know. And then this is also exciting for me in January. You're gonna love this because I'm leaving from Palm Beach County, and I'm going to Duluth. Last year when I was in Duluth at the Arrowhead EMS conference, which by the way is an amazing conference. It's so nice. But last year when I was there, it was minus 10 degrees.
Oh my God.
And I taught hypothermia there. So
isn't it amazing the people who show up to teach that conference because it's 10 degrees, but at least they're getting paid, and the volunteers who come out because they want to learn.
Yeah, that's the thing with these conferences. That's the thing. You're there for the people who are showing up in your classroom are usually there because they want to learn. Some of them put their butt in the seat and they're getting CME, and you know who they are. All right, because they're on the phone the whole time. But I even when I'm talking to when I was down in Georgia and I was doing a keynote there, even when I was doing the keynote with the entire audience, I made it interactive. And if you were on your phone, it didn't give you impunity from getting called on. So,
Dave, you should send me if you have a screenshot of something about that broken heart syndrome. I'd love to just send it out to my members.
How about we talk right after the show?
A lot of them are in New York. What's that?
How about we talk right after the show?
All right, that sounds good. All right, guys. Go ahead.
I have a friend of mine who's up in the Alaska area, and send me the flyer. I'll make sure he gets it. He's a director of EMS, way up there someplace, but they're all close. Once you're even in the outer areas, you're just a plane flight away from Anchorage.
Well, everybody's just a plane flight away from everywhere.
Right.
You know,
But you know what I'm saying. You know, these little they take these little puddle jumpers
yeah, they
and
do.
they get everywhere
Sometimes
with
you live
them.
on
Right.
an island.
Right. But he's a director. I sold 12 wrenches into Juneau, Alaska at one time. I've had a couple of sales of the wrenches into
That's great.
Alaska and areas that you wouldn't expect, like there are people there. But yeah, but this guy is a director up there. I'll send him your stuff. So
I need to say this. Anybody looking for EMS work, they're hiring in Alaska.
that's true.
Yeah.
They are.
They're hiring
in Alaska.
in all of these places. They're losing them everywhere. COVID wiped them out.
All right, guys, let's end it there. And we'll hopefully have another show coming up maybe next week.
All right.
And thanks everyone for joining us. Please be sure to hit the like button, share the episode, and let other people know about the show so we can keep growing it and keep getting people to pop in and comment and hopefully have a little bit of a takeaway during each show. So with that said, I am Jim Hoffman from EMS Office Hours.
Josh Knapp.
Dave Brenner.
Stay safe, everybody.